All right, Formula One heads to Melbourne for the Australian Grand Prix at the weekend. The Red Bull team will look to continue their 100% winning streak after both drivers got podium finishes in the first two races of the term. Joining me to chat about the upcoming Australian Grand Prix is Formula One expert and a member of Motorsport South Africa, that is Vic Maharaj. Good afternoon, Mr. Maharaj. Great to be talking to you, Formula One, as we build up to the Australian Grand Prix on Sunday. What do you make of what to expect from the 20 drivers who battle for a podium finish?
Well, look, I think it's going to be quite an interesting Grand Prix. I think overall, if you look at what we saw at Saudi Arabia with Perez giving Max Verstappen quite a, let's call it a hiding. And I think for fans out there, this is the best we can hope for. It literally looks like Sergio Perez has lifted his game. And a good turnaround in fortune for the Mercedes AMG Formula One team with George Russell and Lewis Hamilton scoring some good points. I think Ferrari are under the hammer. They're under a bit of stress. Let's see how they pan out. But I think it's going to be a Red Bull 1-2 if there are no reliability concerns. But hopefully Perez can give Max Verstappen a good run for his money.
Vic, let's talk about that rivalry that will be one to look out for. How important is it, the rivalry that is, between Perez and Verstappen for the successful defending of Verstappen's world title this season?
I think it's really, we as Formula One fans, we want to see a very, very close race and a close championship. So we don't want to see a situation where Max Verstappen runs away with it or any other driver for that matter. So it really looks, and we all hope that Sergio Perez can give Max Verstappen a run for his money across an entire season. I think that's really what we've got to see. Sergio has been very good on street circuits. Melbourne is a quasi-street circuit, so it may play to his strengths. And Red Bull hasn't had the best of results there, but I do think if you look at the advantage that the car has at this stage in the championship, Sergio really has all the tools at his availability to give Max a run for his money.
You're talking about the car, in particular Red Bull, but Aston Martin is the only one that has come close. How do you think Fernando Alonso will do, especially in the Australian Grand Prix? He definitely has something to offer for 2023.
Absolutely. I think if there's one thing we can be sure about Fernando Alonso is if there's one driver who can extract the maximum from the package, from the car, from the engine that he has, Fernando will definitely do it. He'll drive the wheels off the car. And I think if there's any chink in the Red Bull armor, we saw that there were reliability concerns for Max Verstappen in qualifying at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Similarly with Sergio Perez in the race, they were turning the cars down just to make sure they got to the end. So if there's any chink in that Red Bull armor, I think it's a good bet for Fernando Alonso to possibly squeak that win there.
Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton have been a no-show so far this season. Of course, F1 fans are expecting them to rock up for the season. What do you think is cooking in between the Mercedes franchise and, of course, Lewis Hamilton and Toto Wolff, who's also at the helm of it all? Do you think this could be another disappointing year for the Brit?
I think it's going to be a very, very difficult run into the championship for the next couple of races. They've all been talking about a drastic overhaul of the car to kind of go to a Red Bull type concept. They do admit that they've got the car concept wrong. And unfortunately, Lewis Hamilton, most successful Formula One driver of all time, probably the best driver of all time, hasn't got the tools to be able to take the fight to Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. We know that he can do it. I think the reality is that the Mercedes Grand Prix team is under massive pressure, Toto Wolff under huge pressure to try and make sure and turn the season around. But with the budget cap that we've seen, it's very difficult to understand how they can turn around in this year. They probably will have to look at using this year as a building phase towards next year as a full-on onslaught. But the pressure is on. They did turn it around to some extent at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So I'm expecting more of the same, probably just behind the Aston Martins.
All right, considering McLaren underperforming, what does that say to the rest of the 2021 2023, I beg your pardon, F1 season?
Look, I think that with McLaren underperforming, you do see a few other teams coming in the midfield, most notably Williams. Alex Albon has got a car to do some great things with. He says that the Williams Grand Prix car is a very, very good one. It's probably the best he's driven since he's been there. And if you remember last year, if you cast your mind back to last year, this was a race that they scored points on in terms of their first point scoring race. So I would expect a good run from Williams. Alpine as well, probably a good run from them to try and run the Mercedes and possibly the Aston Martins close. I think the weirdest thing that we're all talking about, we're not talking about Ferrari. We're not talking about Charles Leclerc and his championship battle. I think if we talk about a team under pressure, it's not only Mercedes. I think Ferrari under huge pressure, and it's going to really be quite interesting to see what they bring to the Melbourne Grand Prix. Remember, Charles Leclerc won this race last year, so it is a good hunting ground for him. Let's see what Ferrari can bring to the race.
Well, Vic, in closing, you did mention Charles Leclerc, who's a defending champion. Who do you think will walk away with the 2023 honours of the Australian Grand Prix come Sunday?
Oh, it's going to be a difficult one. I probably have to make a lot of fans unhappy. Probably going to say Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, and I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton to round out the podium.
Fantastic. Vic Maharaj, always great to talk to you about Formula One. Thanks for your insights there as we build up to the Australian Grand Prix that is coming up on Sunday. It's just the third race of the 2023 season, and Red Bull showing that they want to dominate the entire term.